Traditionally, most doctors in the United States have worked in private practices that they own by themselves or with other doctors. But lately, an increasing number of doctors have chosen to be salaried employees of hospitals. Soaring healthcare costs have led many insurance companies and the state and federal governments to reduce the payments they make to doctors in return for treating patients. Doctors in private practice have found their incomes fluctuating, which makes the steady income from a hospital salary more attractive. One rule from the healthcare changes passed by Congress in 2010 requires doctors and hospitals receiving payments from Medicare to convert to electronic record keeping. Doctors can avoid the cost of acquiring new computer systems and the paperwork necessitated by other new rules by choosing hospital employment. Choices made by individual healthcare providers to facilitate compliance with federal laws creates changes to the landscape of healthcare decisions we make as consumers of that care. People must make choices as they try to attain their goals. The choices people make represent the trade-offs made necessary by scarcity. Scarcity is a situation in which unlimited wants exceed the limited resources available to fulfill those wants. Economics is the study of the choices people make to attain their goals, given the realities of scarce resources. An economic model is a simplified version of reality used to analyze real-world economic situations. Scarcity is a regular situation in which unlimited wants exceed the limited resources available to fulfill those wants. The economic systems scattered around the world cover the spectrum from centrally planned to mixed to free enterprise economies, each approaching the solution in different ways. These all share the challenge to decide what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom production is generated for. The easiest way to distinguish between scarcity and shortage is that scarcity is a naturally occurring limitation on the resource that cannot be replenished. A shortage is a market condition of a particular good at a particular price. We need to look a little deeper into the ideas of scarcity and shortage. What makes such shortage happen? We might ask a specialist who knows a little something about the supply and demand curves. Let's take a short walk with Buzz.
The Buzz Lightyear aisle. Back in 1995, short-sighted retailers did not order enough dolls to meet demand.
Hey, Buzz!
Halt! Who goes there? Quit clowning around and get in the car!
Buzz! Buzz! I know how to defeat Zurg!
You do?
Tour Guide Barbie knows that a shortage caused the 1995 market situation of Buzz Lightyear dolls running out of stock. Just think, what would Barbie do? Easiest way to distinguish between the two is that scarcity is a naturally occurring limitation on the resource that cannot be replenished. A shortage is a market condition of a particular good at a particular price, like Buzz Lightyear dolls in 1995. A shortage occurs whenever quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied at the market price. More people are willing and able to buy the good at the current market price than what is currently available. When a shortage exists, the market is not in equilibrium. At equilibrium, the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied at the market price. The term shortage can be easily confused with scarcity, which is one of the underlying basic problems of economics. The easiest way to distinguish between the two is that scarcity is a naturally occurring limitation on the resource that cannot be replenished. A shortage is a market condition of a particular good at a particular price. Over time, the good will be replenished and the shortage condition resolved. In this microeconomics class, we will explore how the economy of our country exists as thousands of small and large sectors of industry are intertwined with our trading partners and served by our government's establishment of security, safety, and a world-class monetary system. Our focus in microeconomics is on how households and firms make decisions to promote and grow their organizations. This class will be unlike any other journey you have made before as you discover explanations for events happening in the world around you. Rational individuals weigh the benefits and costs of each action while exercising reason, sound judgment, and good sense. People making rational decisions implement actions only when the benefits outweigh the costs. This theme prevails through all aspects of economics and will be revisited throughout this course. Economists emphasize that consumers and firms consistently respond to economic incentives. Many rational decisions made by people and companies are influenced by our government in the form of taxation, production incentives, and regulations placed on how businesses operate. Incentives are seen in government efforts to decrease the costs of producers making certain goods and thereby the costs to consumers. Be mindful of your responses to incentives created to influence how you consume goods and services. We use the word marginal to mean an extra or additional benefit or cost from making a decision. The optimal decision is to continue any activity to the point where the marginal benefit equals the marginal cost. Marginal analysis is the analysis that involves comparing marginal benefits and marginal costs. This marginal theme has a prominent seat in economics and traverses into many other aspects of study. Become comfortable with what marginal means and how it is applied. You have already conducted marginal analysis in college as you decided how many credits to carry this semester. Was the marginal cost of taking one more class worth the marginal benefit of getting it done? Costs are not just the additional tuition fees, it includes your most scarce resource, your time. Now you're thinking like an economist. Many times, we do not recognize all incentives we respond to. Sometimes our decisions seem rather irrational when viewed in hindsight. Could it be possible that a great healthcare system would encourage a ghastly, unhealthy obesity epidemic? In several weeks, we will study the healthcare system of the USA and compare it to healthcare in other countries as we look into unanticipated consequences of the system we have. Obesity is not the only complicating effect of our systems. As we will learn, costs to the U.S. economy far exceed the costs witnessed in other countries. Again, cost considerations are not just about the money we spend. It includes the marginal costs of unanticipated obesity in the USA. Every society faces the economic problem that it has only a limited amount of economic resources, so it can produce only a limited amount of goods and services. Society faces trade-offs. A trade-off is the idea that, because of scarcity, producing more of one good or service means producing less of another good or service. Every activity has an opportunity cost, the highest valued alternative that must be given up to engage in an activity. Trade-offs force society to answer three fundamental questions. What goods and services will be produced? How will the goods and services be produced? And who will receive the goods and services produced? Answers to these questions are determined by the choices consumers, firms, and the government makes. Each choice made comes with an opportunity cost. Most often, producers make goods and provide services on the basis of their ability of turning the product into revenue. The decision to make one thing versus another thing hinges on the opportunity cost of the revenue foregone for the option not taken. Sending a mission to Mars may mean we do not achieve the cure for cancer. Our human capital and mission funding resources are limited, so we need to consider all trade-offs and select a path forward. Firms choose how to produce the goods and services they sell. For example, firms often face trade-offs between using more workers or more machines. Decisions like these are faced by the companies producing the product, and those decisions are made on the basis of financial incentives. It might be a tax benefit experienced by employing more workers, or it might be higher profits experienced by offshoring production to lower-cost workers in other countries. In the United States, who receives the goods and services produced depends largely on how income is distributed. An important policy question is whether the government should intervene to make the distribution of income more equal. Income equality generates substantial debate across the nation. It becomes a question of what is income equality. Should the high school lifeguard at the local pool make the same amount of money as medical doctors who studied in college for 14 years, then invested in a private practice? We often see income equality issues in the media, but do not always recognize what it is. It includes discussions about marginal tax rates set small for low-income earners, but large for high-income earners. Societies organize their economies in two main ways. A centrally planned economy is an economy in which the government decides how economic resources will be allocated. A market economy is an economy in which the decisions of households and firms interacting in markets allocate economic resources. Today, only a few small countries, such as Cuba and North Korea, still have completely centrally planned economies. In a market economy, the income of an individual is determined by the payments received for what is sold. Generally, the more extensive the training a person has received, and the longer the hours the person works, the higher his income will be. The high rates of unemployment and business bankruptcies during the Great Depression of the late 1930s caused a dramatic increase in government intervention in the economy of the United States and other market economies. Some government intervention is designed to raise the incomes of the elderly, the sick, and the people with limited skills. In recent years, government intervention has expanded to meet goals such as the protection of the environment, the promotion of civil rights, and the provision of medical care to low-income people and the elderly. Some economists argue that the extent of government intervention makes it more accurate to refer to the economies of the United States, Canada, and Western Europe as mixed economies, rather than pure market economies. A mixed economy is an economy in which most economic decisions result from the interaction of buyers and sellers in markets, but in which the government plays a significant role in the allocation of resources. Market economies tend to be more efficient than centrally planned economies. There are two types of efficiency. Productive efficiency is a situation in which a good or service is produced at the lowest possible cost. You might have heard of this situation involving the selection of the low-cost bidder for a city park project, a bridge development, or even a space program contractor. Yep, that is productive efficiency. Allocative efficiency is a state of the economy in which production is in accordance with consumer preferences. In particular, every good or service is produced up to the point where the last unit provides a marginal benefit to society equal to the marginal cost of producing it. This is why we have so many different makes and models of cars on the roads of America. Each consumer seems to have a different desire for the dream car, and producers are happy to make that vehicle just right for the buyer. That is allocative efficiency. Voluntary exchange is a situation that occurs in markets when both the buyer and the seller of a product are made better off by the transaction. In America, voluntary exchange is the reality we experience. It involves the jobs we take and how we spend our money on the goods or services we want. In the 1990s, I lived and worked in the newly independent states of the former Soviet Union, where 8 decades of a centrally planned economy existed. There was one brand of car on the streets, the Moskvich, made to a uniform design and available in 3 colors. Oh, what a selection! This was allocative inefficiency. It was not about what consumers wanted, it was what the centrally planned economy provided. Inefficiency arises from various sources. Sometimes governments reduce efficiency by interfering with voluntary exchange in markets. The production of some goods damages the environment when firms ignore the costs of environmental damage. In this case, government intervention can increase efficiency. Society may not find an efficient economic outcome to be desirable. Many people prefer economic outcomes they consider fair or equitable, even if those outcomes are less efficient. Equity is the fair distribution of economic benefits. Programs designed to increase equity may reduce efficiency. Life is full of trade-offs. Economists are known for using graphs, charts, formulas, and models to explain our concepts. We follow the scientific method used by other scientists in a wide range of studies. This short list approach to solving and explaining complex situations requires simplification and streamlining. We consider models most effective when they aid understanding and increase awareness of complex situations. Consider how the model can be used in real-life situations, how we can test its accuracy, and how modeled results respond to changes in key economic variables. An economic variable is something measurable that can have different values, such as the incomes of doctors. A hypothesis in an economic model is a statement that must be correct or incorrect about an economic variable. To test a hypothesis, we analyze statistics on the relevant variables. Economists accept and use an economic model if it leads to hypotheses that are confirmed by statistical analysis. Basically, we accept them if they work. Positive analysis is concerned with what is. Normative analysis is considered as what ought to be. This is the nexus of economic thinking, as many people confuse statements of what should be and what is. When people make statements like wages should be higher, we quickly identify the word should to see it is a normative statement. A stable economist will make statements like wages made higher by 3% can increase tax collections by the U.S. Treasury by 2%. Now we have a positive analysis result, and we can debate the accuracy of the statement. Normative statements cannot really be debated because they are based on opinions, not facts. Because economics studies the actions of individuals, it is often considered a social science. Economics considers human behavior in every context, not just in the context of business. Economists have played an important role in the formation of government policies in areas such as the environment, healthcare, and poverty. This does not limit the scope of issues economists approach. It puts understanding to the opportunities it conveys.
Aerial coverage of today's game is provided by MetLife. These beautiful scenics. Gillette Stadium. On the 10-yard line after an 8 and punt by Jacksonville. It's 1st and 10. This is Edelman. Quick and
We look at the big picture from the blimp and call it macroeconomics. When the camera goes to field play coverage, it is microeconomics. You can think of microeconomics as household decisions made in local markets, and considerations of how government decisions affect our choices. This is where we are going in this class. Across all topics of economics, you will discover we use certain terminology that other studies use. When I talk of depression, I am generally not speaking about a mood or mental state. I am talking about a slowdown of the economy like the USA experienced in the 1930s. Shared terminology reaches into accounting when we talk of capital, investments, and technology. When you hear an economist talking of demand, it is not a rude request made with urgency. It is about how buyers' wants are matched with their willingness to pay. You will collect a broad understanding of how and when to apply these expressions in the discussions you are involved in. Expand your understanding with accurate terminology and meaning. In our everyday lives, we are rather accustomed to visualization aids. We watch TV, play video games, and read books and maps. These are all different ways of reducing the real world to something graphically descriptive. We do not show everything of the real world on a map. We only show what is important to what we want to know about, like a road, a park, or a point of interest. We use graphs, charts, and models a lot in economics as a tool to describe the concepts that convey important findings. Values for an economic variable are often displayed as a bar graph or a pie chart. In this case, Panel A shows market share data for the U.S. automobile industry as a bar graph, where the market share of each group or firms is represented by the height of its bar. Panel B displays the same information as the pie chart, where the market share of each group or firms is represented by the size of its slice of the pie. Often, we display data as it was observed through time. In this case, it is Ford Motor Company sales each year for 11 years. Panel A put the line on a chart starting at 0 sales climbing to above 7 million cars sold. Panel B shows the same data, but truncates the first 4.5 million sales to give more resolution to the line's changes. The data are identical, but if you did not pay attention to the y-axis values, your understanding would be skewed. Watch out for this one. It happens a lot in our lives, not only in economics. The figure shows a two-dimensional grid in which we measure the price of pizza along the vertical axis, or y-axis, and the quantity of pizza sold per week along the horizontal axis, or x-axis. Each point on the grid represents one of the price and quantity combinations used in the tables. By connecting the points with a line, we can better illustrate the relationship between the two variables. We regularly use tabular data like you might enter into your spreadsheet program and then graph it to display what the numbers look like. The information is identical, but seeing it both ways helps you explain your findings to yourself and others. We can calculate the slope of a line as the change in value of the variable on the y-axis divided by the change in the value of the x-axis. Rise over run. Because the slope of a straight line is constant, we can use any 2 points in the figure to calculate the slope of the line. For example, when the price of pizza decreases from $14 to $12, the quantity of pizza demanded increases from 55 per week to 65 per week. So the slope of the line equals -2 divided by 10, or -0.2. The demand curve for pizza shows the relationship between the price of pizzas and the quantity of pizzas demanded, holding constant all other factors that might affect the willingness of consumers to buy pizza. If the price of pizza is $14, point A, an increase in the price of hamburgers from $1.50 to $2 increases the quantity of pizzas demanded from 55 to 60 per week, point B, and shifts us to demand curve 2. Or, if we start on demand curve 1 and the price of pizza is $12, point C, a decrease in the price of hamburgers from $1.50 to $1 decreases the quantity of pizzas demanded from 65 to 60 per week, point D, and shifts us to demand curve 3. In a positive relationship between two economic variables, as one variable increases, the other variable also increases. This figure shows the positive relationship between disposable personal income and consumption spending. As disposable personal income in the United States has increased, so has consumption spending. Using graphs to draw conclusions about cause and effect can be hazardous. In Panel A, we see that there are fewer leaves on the trees in neighborhoods when many homes have fires burning in their fireplaces. We cannot draw the conclusion that using fireplaces causes the leaves to fall because we have omitted a variable, the seasons of the year. In panel B, we see that more lawnmowers are used in a neighborhood during times when the grass grows rapidly, and fewer lawnmowers are used when the grass grows slowly. Concluding that using lawnmowers causes the grass to grow faster would be making the error of reverse causality. The relationship between two variables is linear when it can be represented by a straight line. Few economic relationships are actually linear. However, it is often useful to approximate nonlinear relationship with a linear relationship. In this case, we will generally use the straight line approach to make example of the concepts we discuss. In later levels of economics, we consider curved lines to express relationships between variables. The relationship between the quantity of iPhones produced and the total cost of production is curved rather than linear. In panel A, when we move from point A to point B, the quantity produced increases by 1 million iPhones, while the total cost of production increases by $50 million. Further up the curve, as we move from point C to D, the change in quantity is the same, 1 million iPhones, but the change in the total cost of production is now much larger, $250 million. Because the change in the Y variable has increased, while the change in the X variable has remained the same, we know that the slope has increased. In panel B, we measure the slope of the curve at a particular point by calculating the slope of the tangent line at that point. The slope of the tangent line at point B is 75, and the slope of the tangent line at point C is 150. The formula for a percentage change between two variables for any two periods is expressed as the difference between the variables divided by the value at the beginning. It might be the expression of your GPA from your first year in college to the GPA you earned last semester. It results in a decimal number, but multiplying it by 100 expresses it as a percent. Look at that. You just increased your GPA by 35%, and now you can prove it. The area of a rectangle is equal to its base multiplied by its height. Total revenue is equal to the quantity multiplied by price. Here, total revenue is equal to the quantity of 125,000 bottles times the price of $2 per bottle, or $250,000. The area of the shaded rectangle shows the firm's total revenue. Ultimately, it is price times quantity, illustrated on a graph. The same application of geometry applies to triangles, as we use 1/2 times base times height to generate the area to discover a change of demand in terms of a price reduction that caused the quantity demanded to increase. We revisit these types of calculations a lot in this class. We will use economic data provided by a clearinghouse of USA economic data called the Federal Reserve Economic Data Portal, or simply FRED. On an exercise coming to you soon, you will collect tabular data from FRED, put it into a spreadsheet program like Excel, graph it, and use a tool in Excel to create a prediction line about the number of people actually employed in the USA. You will compare historic employment levels against how many people are actually gainfully employed in the economy right now. Your numbers will look different from these because I did this figure in May 2016. You will have new data, and that gives life to economic projections because they can be made with today's numbers. Call it data verifications, cross-checking, review, or simply a gut check to make sure your results look reasonable and consistent with perceptions of the real world you are trying to explain. Sometimes it is a formula you created or logic you applied to the situation. Prepare your data. Conduct a self-review of your findings. And when you are not quite sure of your answer, ask someone to review it with you. Ask me. I am your economics professor, and I care about you learning this topic. Often, I find the best exercise is to explain my findings to someone else. When I explain it, I listen to what I am saying and catch so much more than when I first prepared it. Your turn. Give it a try.